Dishwasher Dreams is a solo play that I wrote a while ago, and it's about a parallel story of me going to Los Angeles and auditioning for what I feel is a career, hopefully building its game changer of a role that I'm auditioning for. So as I'm preparing to audition for this role as a terrorist, I'm thinking about the stories my father told me of how he arrived in America. So it's this parallel story of me trying to make it in Hollywood and reminiscing about how my dad tried to go from being a dishwasher to his aspirations of being a restaurant owner. So, I say that I am literally here in existence because of a dream of a dishwasher who dreamt of a world of opportunity so that he, as well as his children, could, believe that America could make its promise to a dream that anything is possible. I always felt like a freak, like an outsider. I grew up, as a joke, from the only Bengali Muslim family in Spanish Harlem, which is like being the only Amish guy at a rap concert. So I always felt like an outsider growing up, and I was embraced by hip hop. And I hung out with these motley crew of like graffiti artists, and we all felt a sort of common feeling of we were outsiders. So when I graduated from high school, I saw George Carlin and Richard Pryor, but more so George Carlin, and it inspired me to say, oh, you can be satirical, you can make fun of the absurd things of life. And Carlin was really intense because he was just counterculture, rebellious. He was constantly challenging the status quo. And it's funny, I don't think of George Carlin as hip hop, but this was the philosophy of hip hop, to challenge the status quo. So I decided to be a comedian right out of high school, and I fell in love with it. It's like I'd find my calling, but there was a glass ceiling because, all that was available to me when I was auditioning was terrorists, cab drivers, very one-dimensional characters. So, this dream that I had of being a comedian hit a wall. And that's kind of where I begin this solo play, what to do when your dreams are deferred. Is there a plan A or plan B? A lot of artists get depressed or bitter. So when I begin to play, I think it's universal because a lot of people hit that wall and they don't know what to do. And it was in Hollywood when I was dealing with being a foreigner in Hollywood. I don't drive, so LA is a driver's town. I just felt depressed, like, what am I doing here? And it was at that moment when I had that epiphany. I was like, well, if I'm feeling like an outsider and a foreigner in Los Angeles, what must have it been like for my father to come from another country to land in New York in the 40s as a teenager, trying to navigate a world where he couldn't even speak the language? And that's when I felt this sort of connection to my father, this inadvertent connection to my father. Yeah, for me, when I felt like a freak and getting bullied and getting teased, and the fact that I grew up Muslim, I didn't feel like I belonged. So when I would go home and I would watch the Three Stooges, I'd watch Abbott and Costello, they were outsiders, and these were like guys who just made me laugh. If you look at a lot of the Three Stooges bits, it's them making fun of class. Like when the Three Stooges go to repair a rich, mansion, they're making fun of the rich. And so, like, as a little kid, I felt a connection to them and animation, like Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny. I felt like, it was just perfect medicine for being isolated or feeling lonely. So I felt comedy was the greatest medicine. It's so healing. So I naturally wanted to be a comedian. So I started off as like an impressionist and all that. But what George Carlin and Richard Pryor and now today like Chris Rock and what Jon Stewart and whatnot does, it's kind of like thought-provoking comedy. And that's the comedy that I love, the truth teller. In the beginning, it was a lot more comedic. And now I think it's trying to capture, the struggle of my father surviving in a world where he didn't know the language. He was illiterate. He was undocumented. He had to navigate in a world where he was a dishwasher trying to own his own restaurant. That's such a radical idea. Like I thought I was progressive and rebellious, but I didn't really understand like what that meant for a dishwasher to want to own his own business. And how did that first group of immigrants who jumped ship and landed in America, what were they leaving behind? You know, were they depressed? Were they isolated? I never thought of that because we're children. We don't think of our parents as like, we just think of them as like parents. Like we don't think about what they dealt with. So I was fortunate to have a director that say, let's talk about this. Let's bring it into the show and not just make it jokey jokey. So by doing that, I think we incorporated more music with Avi, who's phenomenal on the tablas. And so I think the music is what really created this emotional journey. And even though it's a solo show, for me, it's a two-man show. It's me and Avi kind of having a dialogue. So when I talk about East Harlem, Avi takes you with to East Harlem. When I talk about Yankee Stadium, when we do the national anthem, he takes you to, Yankee Stadium. And when we go back to Bangladesh, the lights change and Avi plays this music where the challenge was I didn't want to use gimmicks like props and monitors because I feel that's sort of like cheating. I wanted really the performance to bring the audience in. And that really is because of the director, Che Yu. Che was incredible in holding me accountable for telling the story in an authentic way, but incorporating music. And it's great to see white people coming in and going, what is that instrument? Is that a drum? That's purely an Indian instrument that has never been scored to in American theater. So we're like breaking new ground by incorporating an instrument that's never been done in American theater before. There was a movement in the late 70s and early 80s when I was a little kid that was hip hop graffiti uptown in the Bronx. And then at the same time, on the Lower East Side, there was punk rock. So I was, a kid watching these two movements going on. And the whole philosophy is like, we can't afford to get into the clubs, so we can't dance in the clubs. We're not going to get in the museums, so none of our artwork is getting into the museums. And this rap that we're doing, no one's going to sign us, so let's do it in the street. And then downtown, you had punk rockers who didn't even know how to play their own instruments. I mean, I saw the Ramones early on. I was like, what the hell is this? But it was just so much fun. And I realized that it was like, you didn't need the establishment. You created your own art. And I feel like no matter what community you are in, whether it's Merrimack, the Midwest, Canada, wherever you are in a third world country, you can make art. You don't need permission. And once you find a group of people that are your crew, that's all you need to start creating art. I feel every time I do this show, I'm learning something. I know one thing I could tell you, I was a spoiled kid and very obnoxious to my parents. I'm learning gratitude. And it's funny, when you become middle-aged, you do actually change because I was very rebellious, like counterculture, F the establishment. But now that I'm older, I realize like what my parents went through. And also what immigrants who come to this country with literally nothing and they can't even speak English. So to think that our parents were able to provide this world so that we can live with this freedom is mind-blowing, man. Like, so I'm learning to really experience that. And it's funny, when I wrote the show, I felt like younger audience would gravitate to me. But what's happening, and it's been happening in Merrimack a lot, my mom is a person I feel I have nothing in common with. We're like she's from Mars, I'm from New York. But audiences after the show, they're really moved by my mom. There was an Irish woman last week. She was emotional talking to me. She said, I moved to Massachusetts because the Irish is here. And she says, no matter how much I can pretend, it's not Ireland. Boston is Boston. Merrimack is Merrimack. And she said, I really feel what your mother feels, that no matter what, my home is on the other side of the world. I never expected when I wrote this show to have an older white lady from Ireland tell me that. Well, In Search of Bengali Harlem is a project that I'm passionate about. I was doing this solo show, kind of, really working with the documentary at the same time. So me and my buddy Vivek Ball, who's a professor at MIT, he did this entire academic research, and the book is called Bengali Harlem, Lost Histories, and that's on Harvard Press. You can get it on Amazon. So that book is really a deep dive. It's a lot more detailed about the research of who this first wave of men who were fighting very racist immigration laws like the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Asiatic Barred Zone. That first wave of Bengali men came to New York and created this culture, which is now Indian restaurants. So the first Indian restaurants were from these men that came there. So the book is Bengali Harlem. The film is In Search of Bengali Harlem. That's going to be on PBS in May. If you go to pbs.org and just type In Search of Bengali Harlem, you'll see there's a trailer. We're taking this play hopefully to Edinburgh, and I'm hopefully going to be spending the next 2 years, fingers crossed, because I'm already in development. We're wanting to do American Masters episode on Sabu, who's the first Indian superstar. He was in Elephant Boy, Jungle Book. He was the first Mowgli. Thief of Baghdad, which was a groundbreaking special effects film. George Lucas said that Thief of Baghdad changed the course of special effects for Hollywood. And so here was this young Indian superstar that was a child actor, and once he hit his 20s, Hollywood kind of disposed of him. And this generation knows nothing about Sabu. So when Ben Kingsley won his Oscar in 1981 or 82 for Gandhi, he had thanked Sabu. And other than Ben Kingsley, there hasn't been any acknowledgement of who this person is. So I really want to go into a deep dive because I feel like Sabu reminds me of my dad. Came to America when he was really young, didn't know what was going on, and he was kind of used as a pawn by Hollywood to make these really sort of stereotypical one-dimensional roles. They call it empire cinema, which made England look great, but it made the Indians look like savages. So I'm fascinated by his experience. So I can't wait to just dive into that as a director. I feel that's a story I'm really eager to tell. Well, I'm on Instagram, Alaudin.Ullah. I'm on Facebook, Alaudin, Alaudin, Ullah. Um, and the website is Dishwasher Dreams, although I probably got to update it. And you can see all about the Bengali Harlem Project by going to Bengali, Bengali, Harlem.org. So those are the projects that's upcoming. You can find me somewhere around there.